Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our webinar hosted by Next Labs and KPMG. Today, we'll be talking about how you can automate IT, business processes, and security controls to improve compliance and reduce risk. My name is Tony Burning. I am a senior product manager at Next Labs, and I'd like to introduce my colleagues, both from Next Labs and from KPMG, before we get started. So first, I think Krishna, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Tony. Hey, everyone. My name is Krishna. I'm a solution architect with Next Labs. I primarily work on SAP products from Next Labs. And today I'll be demonstrating some of the use cases related to this particular webinar. Over to you, Angel.
Thank you, Krishna. Hey, my name's Engel Schmidt. I'm a senior solution relationship director at KPMG. I manage the relationship between ourselves and Next Labs and also a few other software like SAP. I've been dealing in the SAP security and controls ecosystem for 23 some odd years. And so happy to be here and glad that Next Labs gave us the opportunity to speak to you today. Nick?
Yeah, thanks, Engel, and I'll say the same. I'm grateful that Next Labs gave us the opportunity to present jointly with their organization today. So my name is Nick Wozni. I'm a managing director with KPMG, and one of my roles at KPMG is I lead our controls integration service offering, and this is where we help clients to get controls right as they're going through ERP transformations, and also not just to manage risk, but to take advantage of the transformation program to really advance the maturity of their controls. So thank you for joining today. Let's go ahead and get started.
First, let me go over the agenda. We've covered the introductions, but then our next step in the agenda will be to talk about market trends, the requirements, and common industry practices. Then we'll go a little bit more into the challenges, our approach of the solution, our recommendations, and a few business scenarios. And then finally, we'll go through some use cases and a solution demonstration. We'll leave some time at the end for a Q&A session, during the webinar. You can enter any questions in the Q&A option at the bottom of the screen in Zoom, and we'll try to also answer them during the webinar, or we'll answer them at the end. A couple of housekeeping notes. This webinar is being recorded, and we will be sending out emails afterwards to everyone who is registered, whether you attended or not. So, so with that, I think we are ready to get started. I'll turn it over to Engel.
Well, thanks for that. Today, let's start off with talking about controls integration. For most of you that if you attended our past webinar that we did with Next Labs, we talked about where the industry was going in IT and the disruption in technologies and what, the challenges that were faced with CFOs and especially around controls because of the new dynamics coming into play with all the advancements in technology. And so that here we want to focus more in on controls integration in that new dynamic space. So, we'll talk about a little bit about the new ERP implementations and all these major upgrades. It's coming into play with all that technology. There's been a lot of mergers and acquisitions, also some divestitures, and with kind of the new IPOs that we're seeing. From our own internal audit or external audit functions when we talk to those guys and see how they're handling technology, right? Through the audits in the financial audits. There's a lot of finance transformations going on, and there's a lot of risk transformations going on because of the technology changes. And so what all this means is just an ongoing change to the business processes. And with those changes to business processes, our controls change, right? We talked about this last time where there's more automation in the systems. And so controls that previously were very manual and very cumbersome, and you had to test them so many times a year. Now, a lot of that is being taken over by automation. But does the automation work, and does it really have a control to it? So sometimes you have to have controls around the automation. So we want to touch on that today. And so now I want to hand it over to Nick Wozni, who's going to cover and go into a little bit more detail around this. And Nick, you want to take it from here?
Yeah, thank you, Engel, and great overview of some of the reasons why both external factors and internal factors like internal driven transformation, why organizations need to update their controls. And controls integration is the discipline of getting controls right as you navigate through those internal and external changes in your business. So let's take a look at for a second and talk about what does it mean to get controls right? What does good look like here? So there's a bunch of different factors here on the screen that are some of the most important areas that we see. I really break this into two categories. First, the compliance side. As you navigate through these business changes and the way your business operates, there's going to be a lot new risks. Without a doubt, this group is aware of many new risks that are emerging as technology also evolves. And your organization's going to need to have a new understanding of risks in order to get the controls right to take your business forward. And then the second category is undoubtedly efficiency. Thinking about when controls were first put in place, in many cases, controls were either, and this is just commentary based on a typical organization that we're working with today, um, the controls were implemented at the same time as their ERP, which might be 1 or 2 decades old in many cases, or to address compliance regulation such as Sarbanes-Oxley, a company essentially bolted on a control to their process. And when you bolt something onto a process, inherently it's going to be manual. So the efficiency area is really important because the digital transformation your business is going through, the 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 emergence of new systems, the emergence of new technologies, cloud technologies, and analytics and workflow solutions. There's a lot new. There's a lot of new tools in the toolbox for making controls and compliance processes efficient, and that's going to be a lot of what we talk to today, and the exciting use cases that are will be covered later on in this presentation. Now, before we talk about success further, let's talk about what some of the risks of not getting controls right. And unfortunately, the numbers are showing that many organizations don't get controls right when they navigate through major systems changes. So KPMG prepares a survey or conducts research every year based on public US companies and their 10K filings. And you might have heard this term material weakness, hopefully not in your organization. But this is the most severe control weakness. And actually, if you have one of these, it needs to be reported externally and revealed to your stakeholders and potential investors in the 10K. Um, so of the organizations that have encountered a material weakness, you can see the percentages here, which indicate percentages of material weakness that are driven by IT software security and access issues. And if you look at these years, and this is for year-end filings of 2017, 2018, and 2019, where we've certainly seen an upward trend during those years in digital transformation, the level of the most severe control weakness is certainly on the rise. So definitely keep this in mind that as you navigate through changes, make sure controls remain front and center as you go through that transformation. Um, this is just an overview of Controls 101. Not going to read through all of the detail here, but a couple of the things I wanted to point out. So on the first ribbon across the top, there's the 3 lines of defense: management, who own the controls and ultimately own the accountability for mitigating risk, and then there's internal audit and external audit, who test and opine on the effectiveness of those controls. And how do you implement controls? So the second ribbon, and this is a whole session in and of itself, but there is a life cycle for making sure that controls are designed, built, and implemented correctly. But the most important factor of that is to stay grounded in what is the true risk, something that your organization needs to take a close look at. Those new risks that we were talking about, making sure that those are considered, and then also making sure that existing risks are they're not going to automatically be addressed as your technologies change. So it's extra critical to make sure that any controls design stays focused on risks. And then just across the bottom, we have some of the major categories of controls. You can see that there's definitely quite a few of the technical enablers. As your business moves towards more automation, there's plenty more categories of controls that need to be considered. Now let's talk about how technology is changing. So the first thing I wanted to point out here is these three topics around down at the middle of the page: front office, middle office, and back office. So traditionally, when we've looked at ERPs and the typical systems that you were trying to control as an organization, it focused mainly on the back office, accounting, the bookkeeping, the back office financial processes. But the way that technology is driving change today, we are seeing the front office, middle office, and back office a lot more connected. So that means you're connected to the field and your operations. In many cases, you're even connected to your customers and connected to the various elements of your supply chain. And there's just a plethora of new enablers along the way. Everything is automated today, and that leads to more data, more power in your business processes, but also new risk areas that need to be considered. And to further move on to or to elaborate on that topic, let me move on to the next slide where we show the modern ERP landscape. So on the left side, you'll see the traditional ERP landscape where organizations tended to have one massive ERP instance. And of course, being a modular system, the different parts of the business and corporate functions would bring in different modules that supported that ERP package, and those were integrated together within the same box. And then typically there wasn't the same front, middle office, and back office connectivity like we just introduced. However, if you shift your eyes to the right side of the page, you'll see the modern ERP landscape. So what we're seeing is the core ERP platform is shrunk, and you'll also notice that in many cases it's either hosted in the cloud or it's a software as a service package. And then those same corporate functions that had previously had a module assigned to them in the traditional landscape, they're now out there selecting the best of breed package in the cloud, or packages, portfolio of packages that meet their business needs, that are usable, that have the right user interface, maybe that have the best interaction with the supply chain in their particular industry. And all of these elements form together in an integrated fashion, and they form the modern ERP landscape. The modern ERP landscape is really complex, and then also with the cloud, it's very dynamic as well, meaning that um, the packages are constantly releasing updates and tuning and adding new functionality. So your business process landscape and where your risk lies is a lot more dynamic than ever before. Here's just an example. I'm not going to read through it, but if you take a typical procurement business process, and that's enabled by the modern ERP, you'll see there's very easily there could be 3 or 4 or 5 different third-party providers, cloud providers, and applications that support the different parts of the process. And for a company like your organization to effectively manage risk, uh, there's considerations now that bridge from provider to provider to provider. How does your company um, look at risk from a big picture? That's one of the key questions to be looking at as you consider the type of technology you now have in place. And then how are you going to manage it in such a dynamic environment? And then finally, what is your strategy for third party governance? So all of these things are key things that need to be at the top of the discussion list when you're looking at how are you going to manage risk going into the future. So as we wrap up the introduction, here's just a couple of key considerations to take forward, and I'll spend a minute talking about each of them. So first, it goes back to the understanding new risks. So make sure you're aware of the new risk playing field. We touched on some of them today: third party risks, connectivity, data privacy, and data security. There's definitely a much broader risk playing field than ever before. Secondly, make sure you're including the business and IT compliance teams in the planning uh, for your ERP and digital transformation. A lot of times, we're seeing that the digital transformation progresses and then controls come in as an afterthought or at the tail end. So, as risk professionals and security professionals, um, make sure your organization's giving you a seat at the table to understand the nature of the change, and then be an active part of that transformation. And just a hint on that one, it not only is that going to help you to avoid compliance issues, but it also enables you to drive some of those efficiencies that we were talking about, automation and efficiencies, to make controls and compliance better. Third, this probably goes without saying when we look at the modern ERP landscape. Make sure you're considering the third party governance roles and responsibilities, and how those impact the various processes and technologies. And then fourth, make sure you look at your target operating model. So a target operating model is not just people, process, and technology, but it's also governance. A lot of times we see, people focusing on the process or on the technology, but how a change is going to stick is if people, process, technology, and governance are all taken into consideration and brought together. And then finally, think about how you can mobilize the control function as you prepare for deployment of changes in your organization. And one of the major trends, if your organization isn't experiencing this yet, um, I definitely believe you will soon, is that we're no longer seeing the big bang technology change. These dynamic digital transformation programs have many different go lives and deployments, because the new technologies, the new implementation methods like agile, just allow driving business value faster. But that also means that change happens quicker and controls need to be considered in an iterative manner as well.
Nick, that's great, and so spot on, across the board with controls, and just thinking about that. I mean, when you talk about the speed of the implementation, you're absolutely right, because a lot of these applications are going cloud, right? And so not only are you always faced with the new implementation of the next best breed solution, you're actually handling the updates in the current one too, because in the cloud providers, they're constantly providing updates to their applications, which could change your controls, could change your security. And I did want to touch on that because, back on your slide where you show the dynamics of the cloud-based and on-prem and all these different applications. From an access and security model, those all have different security structures in a sense, and we've already been challenged over the last couple decades with similar type security access, and now we're talking about it across the dynamics of networks and applications and within the applications, and so it becomes more of a challenge, and you've really got to have a strategy in place to address all these nuances. And how are you going to address that and maintain and give everybody the right access, especially when you were talking about the processes. They're going across application, they're going across networks, and now they're going across businesses, both internally and externally to your organization. So I think it's pretty critical. And that's why we work with Next Labs. I mean, they've got solutions that address some of this and help bring your security controls to a next level. And again, I want to thank you for what you just, all the clarity you put around the controls. I'd like to hand it over to the Next Labs right now, and let them run through what we what we're talking about today in addressing automated controls from their perspective.
We will see how we can implement control in a purchasing process. So in SAP purchasing, we have a function of creating a purchase order. There are multiple ways to create a purchase order. You could start from a purchase rec and then convert to a PO, or you could create a PO directly using ME21 and transaction. One of the common control companies would like to have would be to restrict the amount of the total PO value that users can create, so that only authorized people can create POs with bigger value, and also just to make sure that nobody is consuming the total budget they have there. So to demonstrate this particular control, we have simulated a scenario here using band levels. So users have different band levels assigned to them. So some users have band level B1, B2, B3. So B1 band level basically means that they are allowed to create a PO up to $10,000, up to $1,000 USD. Similarly, B2 users can create up to $10,000 USD, including 10,000. So if they create anything more than 10,000, a user belonging to band level B2, if he creates a PO more than total value more than $10,000, then system should stop him from creating the PO to begin with. To demonstrate this, I've laid out the scenario here. So there are two users here, demo user 10 and 11. User 10 has a band level of B1 and user 11 has a band level of B2. So B1 can create up to $1,000 and B2 can create up to $10,000. So we will look at multiple scenarios and see how system will behave it, and we can also and how these things can be done with the Next Lab policies. Let's take a quick look into the system. I already logged into demo user 10. So let's try to create a PO with a value. Let's create a PO with value more than 1,000, and then we'll go and create something that he can do it. I'm going to create a new PO here. So I'm going to take quantity 12, and then I'm going to use net price of, let's say, 100 USD. So the total value is becoming 1210, 1,210. Okay, so the net price is only, okay, this particular product material has net price of $12. So I'm going to increase this to 1,000 or 100. So now it will become $1,200 total price. So we can look at that. Now you can see the total value here in the conditions. The total value of the PO is $1,240. Let's just see whether no, he's allowed to create such PO or not. So I'm gonna try to save here. So it says, do you want to put the document on hold because there are some, there is some faulty data in here. Let's look at the faulty data here. So you can see from the log here, it says total PO value is beyond the band level limit. So basically, this particular message is coming from NextLab's policy, where the policy is evaluating whether user is allowed to create such a PO or not, based on his band. So he will not be able to save this particular PO. He can put it on hold and then come back, correct it, and save it again. But until this particular restriction is addressed, he will not be allowed to completely save the PO. So just to demonstrate, maybe let's try to change the PO quantity. Let's reduce it by, let's make it 50. So now we can see the total PO value is 620. So now let's see if he's allowed to save this particular PO. As you can see, the PO is successfully saved with the number 591. We can take a quick look at it just to confirm. Yeah, the 591, the total value is $620, quantity 50, and net price $12.40. So in this way, this particular user belonging to B1, he's denied to create anything beyond $1,000. At the same time, he's allowed to create if any PO is less than $1,000. Let's look at the similar scenario for a different band user. I'm going to log in with demo user 11 who has a band level B2. Now let's try to create PO again with this user. Let's use we can use the same vendor to demonstrate this. So now we can see the total value. So I've given 2000 quantity. The total value is 24,800. Right. He belongs to band level B2. So let's see whether he will be allowed to create such a PO with 24,000 total USD. Again, it says that document still faulty. So there are messages. So if you go and see the messages, you can see that the total PO value is beyond the band level limit. So he has a band level of B2, which is allowed to see 10,000. Is allowed to create a PO of $10,000. Now, since it's more than 10,000, he's getting this message. Now let's try to change the PO quantity to, see if he's allowed to create anything. It's still 12,400. So I think it is still above his limit. So I'm going to reduce the quantity by a little more. So maybe I'll give 800 units. Now the total value of the PO is 9,920. So let's try to see if we can create a PO for such scenario. As you can see, he is able to successfully save the PO. So in this example, you can control who can create a PO with what values. That type of controls can be implemented using NextLab's policies, and the policies can be very generic. You can have a different combination of criteria to define your business rules or policies. At the same time, the band levels or any criteria like signature authority or delegation authorities could be assigned to users. And the assignment of such attributes to user, there are multiple ways to do it. You could derive them based on your HR data, or you could also use if you have any other non-SAP HR system. So those attributes can be enrolled into NextLab's platform, and those attributes can be used in the decision making. If those attributes can be derived within SAP, So we have multiple options there. So if the logic is really complicated to derive the bands or the limits, you could write an ABAP logic in a baddie. So there is a baddie given part of the product that you can use to write a complex logic to derive such attributes like band level or signature authorities, and that information is sent to next lab policy evaluation, and then the decision comes back to SAP, where system will decide whether he's allowed to create a PO or not. This example, we will see one of the internal control requirement, what we call a segregation of duty. Segregation of duties is a key principle in internal control for any business process. What it basically means that in a given business process, a single person should not be doing all the key functions within the process. For example, let's say if you take a PO, purchase PO as a process, business process, so you cannot have same person creating a PO and also posting a GR. So this type of controls are mainly required or put in place to make sure there is no fraud or error. And these are very critical from an internal controls point of view for different business processes in the system. So in this example, we will look at this specific scenario of PO and the GR. So to demonstrate this, I have taken two users. We have demo user 1 and demo user 2. So there are two different POs, one created by user 1 and another one created by user 2. And now we will do the GR. So at the time of GR, system should validate if there is any SOD risk. And the rule is you cannot have the same person creating a PO or changing a PO and also doing the GR. So if it is the same person, the system should actually warn him about the SOD risk that he's in the process, and then if he understands the risk and he's agreed to go ahead, he's allowed to create the GR. But he does not agree to the risk, then he will be stopped to continue to post the GR. Whereas if he tries to create a GR for a PO which is not created by him or changed by him, then it should be allowed. So there is no SOD risk there. So the system should allow him to go ahead and post the GR. Let's look at this in the system. So I already logged into demo user 1. Let's try to create a GR for one of the PO. I've taken PO 369. So this particular PO is created by demo user 1. So let me quickly show you that. So this is a purchase order report. I'm gonna display a list of purchasing documents created by demo user 1 for this particular vendor. As you can see, 369 is created by demo user 1, right? So now let's say when he tries to post the GR for this, so let's take the posting date here, and then I'm gonna confirm this particular line, saying that this particular line is the goods has been received. So as you can see here, so there is a pop-up with SOD compliance. So this particular pop-up is actually coming from policy. So the next lab policy that is evaluating the SOD risk in this particular business process. He is actually showing this particular pop-up, and it says that access is subject to SOD risk. Do you acknowledge the risk and wish to continue? So it actually warns the user about the risk, and then the user can decide whether he wants to continue or not. If he chooses to continue, yes, he will be allowed to go ahead and post GR. But if he chooses to not to continue, then he will be completely stopped. So let's take a scenario. Let's try to say no here. Then action is cancelled, and then user is completely taken out of the Migo transaction. So basically the particular transaction that he's trying to post is not committed. So the transaction is completely cancelled, and it goes out of the particular document as well. Let's try to let's also look at what happens if we try to click S in this particular scenario. Let's try to do the same thing again. I'm going to create a Migo for the same document. I'm just giving a posting date where my period is open, and then I'm going to confirm my line item with the goods. Let's try to post. So again, you have this SOD risk pop-up from the policy. So now I'm saying yes to this. So I know the risk. I want to go ahead. So you can see that the GR has been posted with document 585. So in this way, if a user understands the risk, he is allowed to post the GR. So now let's take an example where demo user 1 is trying to post a GR for a PO that is created by somebody else. So let's pick a PO. Let me run that report again. I just want to look at the POs that are created by demo user 2. And for the same vendor. Yeah, so we have purchase order 370 that's created by demo user 2. So let's try to do a Migo again. So I'm gonna do it from the beginning again here. So I went into Migo, I choose purchase order. I'm gonna key in my purchase order here. So this purchase order is not created by me. So I should be allowed to create this particular GR. So I'll complete my item and then let's post. Okay, so there is a posting period issue that we can quickly correct. So let me change the posting date. Okay, and then let me post it again. Okay, so as you can see, document is successfully posted. So in this particular scenario, there is no SOD risk associated with the process because the person who's doing GR is different from the person who created or changed the PO. That's why you didn't see any SOD pop up here. But whereas in the previous scenario, where the same person is doing both the key functions, then SOD risk has been shown. So just to look at how this is done in the system, so let me quickly show you the corresponding policy for this. So we have SOD check for PO and GR. So we can have similar SOD checks for multiple different scenarios in different functions like finance, manufacturing, purchasing, sales. In a different function, we could have different SOD checks, and you can define which are the transactions that you want to evaluate the SOD check. So here you mentioned Migo, and then you're saying the SOD check if it is enabled, then and the pop-up, the GRC mitigation pop-up, it's actually defined. So you can so we have control and configuration to define what should be the mechanism to inform the user, whether it is a simple SAP message like you display at the bottom of the bar, or it could be a pop-up that shows up in a separate window. So here we have chosen GRC mitigation pop-up, and that's why it shows that particular pop-up in the scenario. So in this way, NextLab product can be used to implement a lot of internal controls or GRC compliance related information very easily. And the policies, as I said, it's very generic in the sense, you can apply the same policy for multiple different use cases. You don't have to create one by each policy for each scenario. You can generalize them and put into a single policy. And also it's very easy to manage the policies with audit log with the policy definitions itself. If anybody change the policies, you can see the log, and also all the transaction log, whether the SOD check, whether it is true or false, whether it is SOD related or not, all those audit is also stored in here. And there are a lot of reports which could help the internal audit team to demonstrate or prove that there was no SOD violations in a given particular business process or in a given time period. So all those functionalities are readily available out of the box, and then they are well received by many customers, especially the auditing part.
This use case is on protecting sensitive master data in SAP. As you know, SAP has a lot of master data objects in it. Example would be like customer master, vendor master, material master. And some of these objects actually contain sensitive information. For example, if you take customer master or vendor master, both of them have bank account number of the partner, whether it is a customer or vendor. So bank account information like bank account number, bank key, account name, and all these details are stored in SAP, in a different tables, and then the data is accessible via different transactions as well. So whenever you have such sensitive data in SAP, it is always important to protect sensitive data so that so that unauthorized people cannot view the data. Only authorized people can look at those data. So in this example, we'll take a look at two users, demo user 5 and 6. One of the user, demo user 5, is a finance user, whereas 6 is a purchasing user. This demo is basically set up like that. Only the finance user can see the sensitive bank account information on a business partner, whereas purchasing or anybody other than finance group, when they try to look at bank account details in SAP for a given customer or a vendor, they should not see the actual value. They should see the masked value. Let's take a look at how this looks in the system.
As you can see, the policy has multiple components in it. One key component, what we call, is the subject condition, where you can write a specific condition for the user, whoever is accessing the data. So here the condition we have is a department underscore SAP not equal to finance. So if the user department does not belongs to finance, then this policy is relevant. And also the resource component, resource could basically mean which system you're going to apply this to. Like you could have multiple SAP systems in the landscape. So if you want this policy to be applied to a specific system, you can mention that specific resource name here. So in this example, I mentioned H49. That's the name of the SAP system I'm going to use for the demo today. And then the real policy, the masking policy information is mentioned in the obligation, where you can mention the table name, field, and the type of masking. So for example, here the masking table is BUT0BK, and the fields, here you can list your set of fields, and then you can define what type of masking you are applying, whether it is a full mask or you want to do a partial mask. So you can also do a partial mask, meaning you can only mask, you can leave maybe the last 4 positions intact, mask the remaining else, like that. So in this example, I'm going to show full masking. So and the mask value, the mask symbol. So here I mentioned as star star star. So basically star 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 would be used as the mask value when it's used in the system. So this is the policy, and we can see how this takes effect in the SAP system. Let's confirm the department for the user. There are multiple ways you can assign a department to the user. In this example, we use the user master record from SAP SE01 transaction. So let's take a quick look at what department they belong to. Demo user 5. You can see the department is finance. Let's also check for demo user 6. Demo 6 is purchasing. So the requirement is that if the data are being accessed by a non-finance user, then the data should be masked. So let's start with demo user 6, who belongs to purchasing department. Demo user 6. Let's look at the table data first, and then we'll go and see the transaction. So to look at the table data, we could use SE16 transaction, and then BUT0BK is the underlying table for that particular data. So you can execute wide open and see. So as you can see here, the 3 fields: bank key, bank account number, and the account name. All the 3 fields are shown with star, which is a masked value coming from the policy. Right. So you can say that it's applied across the board, meaning it is applicable to all the business partner without any restriction. Let's also confirm this from a from the transaction level. So I'm going to access it using BP. The T code is BP, and you can key in the specific. You can pick any BP. I just picked this one, and let's see. So here you can display the basic data of the business partner, including name and address. So the bank information is stored in the payment transactions tab. You can see here the bank key, bank account number, and the account name. All the 3 fields are shown with star star. And this is because the demo user 6 is not a finance user. That's why he's seeing the mask value. Let's try to see the same data for a finance user who is demo user 5. So let's try to display the table again. I'm going to run wide open. As you can see here, you could clearly see that bank key, bank account number, and the account name. I think account name is not filled for many of the records, but you can see that finance user can see the data that's specific. So let's take we could take the same BP that we used. So this is the BP where non-finance user was seeing a masked value. So let's try to open same BP with the finance user. We can go to the payment transactions tab, and you can see here, so the bank key and the bank account number, so both are visible to the finance user. So this way, using a simple policy defined at the table and field level, the masking can be made in across the system, irrespective of whether it is a table or a T code or even a report or even a Fury app. Irrespective of how you access the data, the masking is applied just by using one policy defined at a table level. Scenario we're going to demonstrate is at the time of downloading a document, basically an attachment from SAP, the document will be protected based on the policy, and based on the policy there will be different permissions or rights that will be assigned to different users. To demonstrate this, we will be downloading a document attachment from SAP, and then we will check that the document is protected with different rights for different people. So we're going to use 3 different users: engineer 1, BOM engineer 1, BOM engineer 4, and BOM project 1. BOM engineer 1 will be downloading the document with protection. So he can see that, we can check that he will have all permissions on the document, whereas engineer 4 do not have any permissions on the document, whereas project 1 user, he can view the document, he can print the document, but he is not allowed to edit the document. So let's check these things in the system. So this is BOM engineer 1 in SAP system. We're going to run a transaction CS03, which is a display of a BOM. This is a material BOM that we have created, and on the material BOM, on the header data, we have different DIR, document info records, that are connected to it. We're going to pick a specific, we can have multiple DIRs, so we're going to pick a specific DIR here, and then this particular DIR has the attachments connected to it as part of linked objects. As you can see, there are 2 attachments connected here. One is a cylinder VDS file, it's a 3D visual drawing file, and then we also have a SAP pocket knife, it's as a VDS file. So engineer 1 let's try to view the file and also to download the file. So when you try to view the file, let's say when you try to double click to view the file, so what happens is that the file temporarily gets downloaded to a system, and then it opens up in the enterprise visual viewer. As you can see, now this is how he can view the file. Now let's try to download this document and then see whether the file gets protected or not. So to download the file, use the option of copy to. I'm going to download this to a folder called demo on the desktop on my system. So as you can see, the file has been downloaded. You can go and check the file. I'm gonna check the file here. So it's in the desktop demo folder. You can see the file got created now. You can also see that there is an extension NXL, which means that this particular product, this particular attachment is protected, and NXL is the extension that Next Labs assigned to it when it protects the document. So on this protected document, you can also see currently, we have different users. So we have a SkyDRM component, which is part of the product. So that particular component manages the different users authorization. So I'm going to log in with the BOM engineer 1 into the SkyDRM client. So I logged into BOM engineer 1. So if I try to open this particular protected document, as you can see, the document it's open in the 3D Visual Enterprise viewer. So you can, it's a visual diagram. You can rotate it, and you can also play. You can also try to edit it. It has an option to edit as well, and you can also see that there is a watermark that gets generated on the document with user ID and also date and timestamp. So basically, with the watermark, you could also even if some fraudulent user trying to take a picture of it, you would still be able to trace it back. Who has who took the picture and also who tried to leak particular data. So in that way, the watermarks will be useful. So we can also see what are the permissions for this particular user on the file. So to check that, we can go back to the file and check the file info. So when you see the file info, it would list different permissions engineer1 has on this particular document. Yep, you can see here. So he has he has permission to view, edit, print, save as, and also watermark. Those are the permissions for engineer1 on that particular document. So for the same document, let's try to check with different user. Let's say engineer4. He does not have any permissions as per the policy. So let me log in as engineer4 and try to open the same document. Okay, I logged in as BOM engineer4. Let's try to see the same document. Let's try to view the same document. Yeah, as you can see, it says access denied. So since he does not have access to the file, he does not have permission to the file to open it, and that's coming based on the policy at the time of the document being protected. When you're downloading the document from SAP, the time the policy, the DRM policy that we have written is applied on the document. That's why BOM engineer4 is not able to view this particular document because he does not have access to it. You can also let's try to check with a different user, which is BOM project 1. He should be able to view the document, but he should not be able to edit the document. So let me log in as BOM project 1. I logged in as BOM project 1 user. So let's look at the same document again. Before I open it, I just want to let's see the permissions of the file for this particular user. As you can see, he has permission to view, print, save as. So he does not have permission to edit, and he does not have a watermark. So those are the permission. Whereas engineer1, who is the kind of the owner of the particular document, he has every right. He has a view, edit, print, save as, and also watermark on the particular document. Let's try to open the document with the project 1. As you can see here, you can see he is able to see the document, and as you can see, there is no watermark. So it's again just to demonstrate that these functionalities are controlled with a policy. For this user, we did not include a watermark to demonstrate that. So similarly, let's try to edit this document and see what happens. So I tried to change the color and see. Let me try to save as. So as you can see, there's a pop-up down below. You do not have permission to perform this particular action. So I can check that message again. You do not have permission to perform the save as operation. So all the changes he's doing, he will not be able to save. He's not able to save as, even in fact, he should also not be able to save them as well. Let's try to save it. Cannot save model to the file. Yeah. So in this way, we demonstrated that, at the time of downloading a document from SAP, the document will be protected based on the policies, and also the protected document will have different users will have different permissions on the document. Even if you send this particular protected document via email to a different user, since outside of your organization, for example, since that particular user will not have any permissions for the policy, so he will not be able to see those particular documents.
Yeah, I think that's the end, guys. So that's the use cases that I prepared. We can take up a Q&A. Any questions you want to ask? Or I know.
Yeah, there's a couple questions in the that are already in the chat or the Q&A functionality. Sure. So let's go through those first. First one is like, how do you recommend associating the bands with a position ID or a level in the organization so that the approval authorities are standardized by level instead of assigned to individual user accounts?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I mean, there are multiple ways to do it. I mean, one way is within the HR. If you are using SAP HR, for example, so within the HR org structure, so there is a way to assign attributes. So there is a transaction like PPO SA and PPO MA, where you can add additional attributes on top of the position. So instead of assigning them to the user, because users can leave organization, they can go other places. So you can have attribute defined at the position level. Let's say maybe purchase manager 1 and purchasing director. Those are the fixed positions within the structure. So you can have attribute defined at the position level. So that way, those will stay with the system, right? And that's actually the recommended if you are using SAP HR. If you're not using SAP HR, say maybe you're using Workday, for example, right? So even there, it's possible to have your attributes defined at a position level, and then those attributes can be enrolled into NextLab's platform, and then you can use them into policy, right? So those are the options that we have.
Okay. And then another question is, besides SAP, does this integration exist for other ERPs, for example, Oracle, PeopleSoft?
That's a good question. So, I mean, NextLabs have product across SAP and non-SAP as well, and we do have support for sorry, some of the non-SAP. I like, for example, ServiceNow, SharePoint, and Salesforce as well. But I'm not sure about Oracle, so we can confirm, and also PeopleSoft. But as a product, we do have non-SAP support as well, with a different capacity and different functionalities. And we are also a big player on the Team Center side, especially the PLM area. So we have products dedicated to Team Center with the native integration. So we have those as well.
And then I think maybe related to this, but here's a question that was sent in advance of the webinar. How do the processes and opportunities shared in this webinar, how are they compatible or complementary to SAP MDG? This person's in the early stages of implementation of both NextLab products and SAP MDG, so they just want to understand the synergies.
That's a good question. So I mean, we do support MDG. So MDG, it's basically the master data governance and master data management module. So typically your material master or some of the finance objects, including customers, vendors, you can manage all of them within MDG. So NextLab SAP products, there are different products for SAP, like DAM, we have DAE, and we have EDRM. So we work very natively with MDG. So DAM, SAP DAM, Dynamic Authorization Management, that works with MDG. SAP DAE works with MDG. So we can look at your specific requirements that you have, and then we can propose what the best way to address it. But from a supportability perspective, so we do support.
Great. Those are the questions that I see right now. Really pause for a bit to see if anyone else wants to either type in a question or ask it in any way. Well, I'll just take this opportunity to again mention that this webinar has been recorded, is being recorded, and you'll all receive an email afterwards with a link to where to go and be able to stream it. And please feel free to share this with anyone that you think might find it useful. With that, I don't see any other questions. If anyone else has anything to add, I'll give Engel and Krishna, and Nick a chance to add anything that they want to here. But I'm not seeing any other questions at this point in time.
Only one comment I have is that if you're interested to know more about NextLabs products, so feel free to reach out to us. There is an email address that you can reach out, and then or if you have any more detailed specific questions that you want to understand, so feel free to contact us. So we will help you to explain you those specific things. Engel, Nate, anything from you guys?
No, I don't. But the same thing, if you have questions around controls or how does this integrate into your larger environment with your existing controls, we're happy to help you out and answer whatever questions you have. We also do workshops around this, just to address it from your controls perspective, and then we get into the technologies like this that really help explain where and how do you utilize it in your overall perspective. So.
All right, great. Yeah. Thanks again, everybody. Thanks for joining us, and then thanks, Engel, Nick, and Krishna for presenting as well.
Great.
Well,
Thank you.
Take care.
Yeah. Bye.
Thank you.